So we've called this step one with confidence. And so we continued the name. And so let's just take a minute to endorse for just being here, doing something different that we are doing something different tonight. As Angela said, my name's Lisa Garcia and I'm the San Diego Regional Director. Next slide, please. So during our time today, we're going to have interactive practice session to learn how to report. Step one with confidence. So I hope everybody has a piece of paper and a pen or pencil. We're going to distinguish between trivial and non-trivial events, identify only one event for each example, and keep step one brief and to the point, and practice by giving examples. Next slide. So we do have some guidelines. We're going to show respect by staying present, by actively listening, eliminate any outside distractions, allow people to speak free from interruptions. Eliminate outside distractions, allow people to speak free from interruptions, no side conversations. Please use the raised hand feature in Zoom. Remember, we're all entitled to our own point of view. Please show compassion. Keep your contribution brief and to the point. Please remain muted unless speaking. Turn on your camera to engage with others. If you have a question, please share them in the chat. There'll be plenty of time for you to ask questions, different parts of the PowerPoint. Okay, next slide. So as you know, we're not here to judge, and we're all apprentices. So we're going to take a poll. And the first poll is, what is your current confidence level with reporting step one? Okay. So we have a little bit, not at all. Some people are somewhat confident. Some people are kind of confident, highly confident. So we have a mixture here in the room. Okay, next slide, please. Each example, and keep step one brief and to the point, and practice by giving examples. Next slide. So we do have some guidelines. We're going to show respect by staying present, by actively listening, eliminate any outside distractions, allow people to speak free from interruptions. Eliminate outside distractions, allow people to speak free from interruptions, no side conversations. Please use the raised hand feature in Zoom. Remember, we're all entitled to our own point of view. Please show compassion. Keep your contribution brief and to the point. Please remain muted unless speaking. Turn on your camera to engage with others. If you have a question, please share them in the chat. There'll be plenty of time for you to ask questions, different parts of the PowerPoint. So the foundation of the recovery method. So we know step one is the trivial event, and it lays the foundation for pretty much the example as itself. And then in step two, we have feelings, sensations, thoughts, and impulses. And step three, we talk about our temper, angry and fearful temper, what tools or spots did we use, recovery spots, and was there any endorsement? And step four was before versus after recovery training. Next slide. So here's some trivialities that we came up with. The recovery method focuses on common, average, trivial that get people worked up. 95% of our lives are trivialities. So traffic, dropping our phone, obstacles, planes aren't on time, delays. We sent that email, inconsiderate people, it's time to spring forward or fall back, frequent annoyances, what am I going to wear? I have to present. So those are some of the things that are little trivialities. So let's go to the next slide and we'll share what are some of the trivialities that you get worked up. But let's talk about some of this first. We focus on trivialities so we don't discuss sex, religion, politics, legal issues, current events, and traumatic events. We are not professionals, so we don't talk about medications, advice, diagnosis, treatment plans, physiological discussions. So those are some of the things that are not trivialities. However, next slide, we can whittle down some of those events in step one. So if somebody's going through a divorce, you know, we can take that. I've been expecting a phone call from a lawyer. That would be the trivial thing, or a text or an email. You might be in a lawsuit, which would be legal. We could whittle that down. Same thing, phone call or paperwork to fill out. We might have an illness. And so we don't talk about the illness or the medicine, but the symptoms that we're having, being on hold. We don't talk about treatment plans. There's always some kind of paperwork. That could be the trivial event that could get us worked up. Funerals, who am I going to see there? What am I going to wear? Next slide. So what is a triviality? What everyday ordinary events do you get worked up about? And so let's open it up for sharing, and we'll just kind of have a little open discussion of the little trivialities that get you worked up. You can just raise your hand. Yeah, Fran, please.
Traffic.
Traffic, absolutely. We can all probably agree about traffic. Anybody else want to share? Yes, Linda, please.
Yeah, yesterday I wanted to get on a Zoom with some friends, but I'd also told a friend I'd pick her up at the hospital, bring her home, and they conflicted. Triviality.
Yeah, you didn't know which one to do first, right? Right, you had two things planned at the same time. Joanne, please.
People running late and not keeping me posted.
Right. Time, yeah, time is something that can get us worked up. Thank you. Nikki, please.
A neighbor who won't say hello when I say hello to her.
Yeah, that's a triviality. Billy, please.
Forgetting things.
Yeah, you have that list and you forgot something, right? Or you leave the house without that thing you were supposed to take with you.
Lack of sleep, insomnia.
Calling to have a pet prescription refilled, and it turned out to be a big event.
So would you consider that a triviality when you called for that to be, because we don't talk about medicine, but would you call, where would you see the triviality in that?
It should have been just cut and dried. I just want a refill, but it turned out to be complicated.
So calling somebody and them not seeing what you needed, correct?
Right.
Okay, good. Angela, please.
Waiting, even though you had an appointment time for a vet, a doctor, whatever it might be.
Right. When we like to be seen when that appointment was supposed to be, right? Ricky, please.
Having bad customer service.
Yeah. I don't like that either. Sandy, please. Hi, Sandy.
Hi. Waiting in line at the grocery store, and then you change lines and the other line goes faster.
Humor's our best friend, exactly. I usually tell this at meetings, you know, that sign says 10 items or less, and somebody's in front of me with 12 or 13. Before recovery, I would count them and then complain to the checker and so forth. And but that is true. That for whatever, lines can give us symptoms. Kim, please.
Having a losing lottery ticket.
A losing lottery ticket, right? Exactly. When you think you're going to be the one that's going to win. Yeah. Okay, let's go on. Oh, one more. Stu, please.
Yeah, if I go out to the car and I'm running late and I find I forgot my keys.
Right.
It'll take an hour.
Yeah. So forgetting your keys can be triviality. Okay. Next slide, please. So what I'd like for all of us to do now is write down an event or a triviality that has gotten you worked up. So let's practice step one. Choose a triviality, focus on one event, be concise and objective. Okay, all right. Kim, would you be kind enough to read step 1 for us?
Sure. Let's practice together. Step 1 with confidence. Report a single situation or event that occurred, an everyday event, when you began to work yourself up. Focus on a brief description of what happened, specifically what triggered temper and symptoms.
Okay, so let's hear from you. Okay, what's the triviality that has you worked up? Step 1. Yes, Joanne, please.
I got an email notifying me that my credit card bill was way higher than usual.
So you got an email about a bill, correct?
I got an email that the bill was much higher than expected.
Okay, that it was much higher than expected, and that's the event. Okay, good. Jennifer, please.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm gonna say this afternoon, knowing that I have neighbors / friends coming over for a little while. I get
You
worked
have
up
some-
before people come over.
Yeah, so you have some friends coming over, and that's what can get you worked up. Good.
Yes.
Billy, please.
I lost a microphone, speaker driver before an area meeting.
Okay, so you lost a speakerphone, a microphone, correct?
Right.
Okay, Marcel? Marcel, is that right?
Marielle,
Marielle, thank you.
Oh.
Marielle, please.
when you get into your car and you think your commute is gonna be X amount of minutes and you put in your navigation and it's triple the time.
Right, so is that an event that's happened to you?
All the time. I live in Los Angeles.
Oh, got it, yeah. 405, I'm
Yeah.
from there, 405 and the
Exactly.
101. I know exactly, Sherman
Exactly.
Oaks, exactly. Okay, Sandy, please.
My friend, I made plans with a friend and she was supposed to come over and she didn't.
Okay, so, and that's when you began to work yourself up. Nikki, please?
My daughter-in-law hasn't opened her birthday present that I sent from Finland for a month.
Okay, Ricky, please?
I'm on a Zoom and then my phone battery died.
Yeah, we can all relate to that. Stu, please, and then we'll move on.
All right, my daughter, who has very little money, goes and orders food from a restaurant delivered instead of going to the grocery store.
Next slide, please. So, what is your trivial event? Let's choose one event where you became worked up. All right, next slide, please. So we're going to try it again because we're practicing again. And that's when I began to work myself up. And this time we're going to say it like this. I'm expecting a phone call. I was expecting a phone call, and that's when I began to work myself up. And I didn't receive it, and that's when I began to work myself up. So anybody want to share? Fran, please.
My brand new DVR system worked and then it didn't. That's when I began to work myself up.
Perfect. Celinda, please.
I have an exercise class and someone called a committee meeting at the same time, and that's when I began to work myself up.
Can't be in two places at once, Celinda?
I can't. Haven't
We
figured that
try.
out.
We try. Kimberly, please.
My card was declined, and that's when I began to work myself up.
Yes. Billy, please.
Had to cancel a doctor's appointment, and that's when I began to work myself up.
Good. Mona, please.
The weather is hot. My air conditioning is running all the time. And that's when I'm beginning to work myself up.
So are you worked up because you're running the air conditioning, or are you worked up because you it's hot?
I'm anticipating a big bill.
Okay, so that could be the event as well. I'm anticipating a bill, my electric bill, and that's when I'm beginning to work myself up. And then step 2, you can give some of those thoughts. So that's the event. I'm anticipating a bill, and that's when I began to work myself up. Okay, let's go on to the next slide, please. Only you can decide which, but only you can decide which event to use for an example. Ask yourself, why am I worked up? What's causing my symptoms? Next slide. Important, note 2, if more than one event or triviality is causing you symptoms, do a separate example for each event. Don't ignore any events. Be concise and objective. Next slide. What it means to be concise and objective, we report rather than complain. We describe instead of interpret. We don't try to convince. We don't dramatize. Next slide, please. How to be concise and objective. So these are some things that in step 1 are really important. We avoid temperamental lingo. We avoid storytelling, and we avoid justifying temper. So let's go on to what temperamental lingo sounds like. So temperamental lingo is the language that maintains and intensifies symptoms. Temperamental lingo is based on judging ourselves or others or situations. It increases tenseness and promotes angry outbursts and fearful anticipations. So there's some things about temperamental lingo, like right versus wrong, should and shouldn't, absolute, it's always like this, or he always does that, he never returns my phone call, extreme thinking, intolerable, unbearable, never ending, unanswered questions. Why did this happen to me? What was he thinking? And Dr. Lowe says that when we ask the word why, that they're odious questions. We don't know the answer. So that's temperamental lingo. Next slide, please. Storytelling. Avoid storytelling. I have to give you some background. Ever since we were kids, oh no, wait, Lisa, wait. I need to tell you a little background. It started about 6 weeks ago. Okay, hang on. When did you really get worked up? That's storytelling. I have to give you some background. You know, my sister and I didn't used to talk, and now we're talking. And then she had a friend that used to be my friend. All that is storytelling in step 1. And it's sabotaging as well. Step 3, next slide, sorry. So here's some sabotage that we talk about. We wouldn't have an example if we didn't have sabotage. Not doing what we have been taught to do in Recovery International. Not doing what is best for our mental health. Making choices that lead to more symptoms, more intense symptoms, or longer lasting symptoms. And I don't have to read all the things that are sabotage, but there's some sabotage words that we know that Dr. Lowe pointed out to us. What is sabotage? So I'll take a second so you guys can read that. An awareness to sabotage is the key to changing our thoughts and controlling our impulses. Okay, next slide, please. So I'll stop for a minute and take some questions. Billy, please.
Is it okay to recap with kindness?
Yeah, I do that too, and I leave out the storytelling and I leave out the temperamental lingo if they do what we just went over. When somebody says that, so let's just get to the point. Let's just say what step 1 was. I couldn't find my credit card, and that's when I began to work myself up. So the event is she couldn't find her credit card, and that's when she's worked up. Good question, Billy. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah, Kim, please.
Yeah, I think the issue of storytelling is important for all of us. But for newcomers, people may be used to another kind of group where full disclosure is really encouraged. So for them, this is a challenge to whittle it down without the storytelling. And I'm sure it's difficult to sort of not cut people off, but redirect them into something that is not storytelling. Thank you.
Right. Oh, Nikki, please.
Sorry for the delay. I'd just like to mention that what I have found is that when we do our step 2, and we talk about our thoughts, some of the storytelling that we'd like to do fits in there really nicely. It's the step 1, just getting it down to the basics, but it's not that we can't give some background, because the
Exactly.
background helps with the spotting.
Right.
There are different spots if it's the family person who hasn't opened a birthday present as opposed to a coworker or something like that.
Right. And in step 2, we can share some of those thoughts physically, mentally, and any disturbing impulses. So who would like to give an example and put it into practice since we're all here together? Holly? Okay, great. Holly, you have a triviality of everyday life, right? And then we need a reader of the 4 steps. Who would be kind enough to read the 4 steps? Oh, Jen, thank you. Okay, and I'll lead the example. And so we're ready. Okay. Jen, can we have the reading of step 1, please?
Sure. Okay, Holly. Report a single situation or event that occurred, an everyday event when you began to work yourself up. Focus on a brief description of what happened, specifically what triggered temper and symptoms.
I was at a restaurant, and when food came out that I couldn't eat and the waitress gestured to the other table, that's when I got worked up.
Okay, so were you upset that the waitress gestured to the other table, or were you upset that you couldn't eat the food?
It was kind of like seconds between the two, so
So let's
maybe
find out. Yeah, go ahead.
maybe the food itself, because I knew I couldn't eat it and I hadn't
Okay.
said anything.
Okay, so when they brought you your food, you began to work yourself up. That's the event, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Well reported. Step 2, please, Jen.
Okay. Step 2, Holly. Report the symptoms you experienced, both physical and mental. For instance, angry and fearful thoughts, confusion, palpitations, disturbing impulses, tightness in your chest, lowered feelings, sweaty palms, and so on.
So let's start with some of your feelings. And there's some words up there that you can use, or you can tell us different ones. And in step 2, we talk about our symptoms, our feelings, our sensations, our thoughts, and our impulses. So where were some of your feelings that when you saw the food?
It maybe some like devious excitement, like prove her wrong that she made a mistake. Kind of like loss of the salad, like I wasn't gonna, kind of sad. I knew then that like I didn't tell her, so there goes the salad. And I kind of was embarrassed that I forgot to tell them, or just that it was like a hassle to have to like pick out the croutons. So I kind of
Okay,
started to panic.
So you had a fearful thought that I was wrong, that I didn't tell them,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
And an angry thought was, what was your angry thought?
I didn't specify, but as soon I got angry when she like kind of like didn't snicker. I don't know. I'm not like, that was the second part. So that you're saying the first thing didn't really make me angry, but maybe like a waste of food kind of thing.
Okay, all right, so you had some angry temper at the situation, perhaps, or at her, right?
She could have been more thorough or something.
Yeah, right. We can't control that outer environment, right? And do you remember any physical symptoms you were having?
I kind of went fast, like I started to panic, and I like was catching my temper. So I might have gone faster to like start trying to make it better and like put my hands on the food to try to pull out the croutons. So speed on the muscles. And some tension, like how exactly to say this politely to her.
And so did you have any disturbing impulse that you may have acted
Yeah,
on?
I think I did have an impulse to complain. more than that, like more than just doing something and picking the food out verbally. And then I
Okay.
kind of, yeah, I could tell I had a flare, so maybe change in breathing.
Okay, all right, so let's go on to step 3, well reported. Step 3, please.
Okay, step 3, Holly. Excuse me. Report your spotting of angry and fearful temper, the RI tools you use to help yourself, and your self-endorsement for your effort.
So let's start with your angry temper. We talked about thoughts in step 2, but let's talk about your temper in step 3. So angry temper is always at the other person or situation, includes resentment, impatience, indignation, disgust, and hatred. So where was your angry temper?
At the situation, and maybe a slight angry temper towards her, impatient, like that we had to fix it, or that she wasn't going to bring me a new salad. So maybe just kind of disgusted with it.
Okay, and do you have a spot or a tool when you have angry temper that you may use?
Well, I didn't catch it until she made the gesture, so I tried to use a word, a look, a gesture, and the sky's the limit to how we can work ourselves up.
Okay, and then let's go to fearful temper. So fearful temper is negative judgment at oneself, and that includes discouragement, preoccupation, embarrassment, worry, hopelessness, despair, sense of shame, feeling of inadequacy. So where was your fearful temper?
Maybe I was a little worried that I was like overworking this person. Like it was just too much to expect her to have to fix it. And kind of somewhat ashamed, like it was Labor Day and there was like another people from other countries who seemed like they were doing fine. And I felt a little bit ashamed of myself for not having a better attitude about what I was given.
Right, and so what other tools or spots did you use to work this down?
I tried to use humor. I like that was Labor Day and here like making her labor for it. It's and I made a comment to her about like, gosh, maybe it's a United States thing because there were people speaking other languages. So I tried to keep it light. And then excuse her. Am I supposed to go on this list? I didn't know.
You can if you have other tools or spots that you like to use, this is just a sheet that we sometimes put up, but you can use whatever spots or tools you like to use that work down your symptoms.
Yeah, I tried to make sure it didn't turn into a vicious cycle, to say anything politely. Like, I'm not going to eat the food. I'm going to have to say this not super, but just polite, cultured, without making a momentous occasion out of a triviality.
Okay.
And then change my attitude. I didn't really need the salad anyways.
Okay. And then one thing for sure, did you endorse?
Yeah, I endorsed because I almost got mad at myself for getting mad, and I caught that it was a flare, that I just had to work it down. So I endorsed myself for working it down, average working it down.
Okay, let's go on to step 4, please. Yeah,
Okay.
Jen?
Sure. Holly, step 4, look at the progress you have made. Begin with, before I had my recovery training, ... and describe the temperamental reaction and symptoms you would have experienced before you began practicing the RI method. What would have happened then versus what happened now, and this will help you to note the progress that you have made.
So if somebody had served you in the past something wrong, how would you have reacted before you had your recovery training?
I might not have asked like calm myself down and told the person that this isn't what I can eat. Like I might have sulked and just kind of that's not the word I'm looking for, but I would have sulked and felt sorry for myself and not said anything.
And then what kind of symptoms would that have produced for you?
I would have gotten angry when the bill came, because I would have been like, 20 minutes staring at the salad. So I would have felt taken advantage of. And I would have maybe like spent the whole day not understanding what happened.
So now you have insight with recovery. Thank goodness we all do, right? So
Yeah.
now you're going to be quiet. Are you still in symptoms about this, or it's
I wasn't ready to, I only had the first step, so.
okay? You did great. Endorse. So are you ready to hear some more spotting from the panel?
I would love it.
Okay, good. So put yourself on mute and we'll open this up to the panel. Anybody have any spots for Holly? Yes, Jennifer, thank you for reading the steps for us.
You're so welcome. And I'm gonna spot in recovery, we don't want to add a harm to the first harm. So we already had a harm of not getting her dish the way she liked it, but we don't want to add a second harm of working ourselves up.
Good, thank you. Angela, please.
We can excuse rather than accuse for the sake of our mental health.
Thank you. Billy, please.
Every act of self-control leads to a sense of self-respect.
Yes, good. And then Stu, please.
People do things that annoy us, not to annoy us.
Yes. Mona, please.
This is basic, not basic.
Good. Kim, please. You're on mute, Kim.
We often see intent when there's only accidents. Nobody is aiming specifically at her.
Yes. Tony, please. Or yeah, Tony, yeah.
Spotlight what you have and want, and blind spot what you don't have and don't want about the situation.
Right. Like we can excuse rather than accuse for the sake of our mental health. Joanne, please.
Temper blocks insight to the other side of the story.
Right. Okay. So let's go on to the concept review. This is a review of the example itself, and we'll take a couple spots for each one. It's not another example, it's just a couple spots to highlight of reviewing the example. So where do we see the angry temper? Negative judgments directed against another person or situation, and that includes resentment, impatience, indignation, disgust, and hatred. Where do we see the angry temper in this example? Yes, Tony, please.
I don't like, it shouldn't be. Or
Okay.
forms of angry temper.
Thank you. Celinda, please.
At the waitress for not reading her mind.
Yeah. Not knowing what she needs, right? Right. So we learn to excuse rather than accuse, and then Kim, and then we'll move on to fearful temper.
Yes, angry temper at the situation and at the server. More tolerance for others means fewer symptoms for ourselves.
Right. So then we have fearful temper, and that's negative judgment directed against ourselves. Includes discouragement, preoccupation, embarrassment, worry, hopelessness, despair, sense of shame, feeling of inadequacy. So where do we see the fearful temper in this example? Yes, Jen, please.
Thank you. Yeah, perhaps some worry that she's not going to get the dish that she wants, but we can, in the restaurant, we can worry with calmness and not emotional hysteria, not an emergency.
We don't sell recovery, we demonstrate. Celinda, please.
I've seen fearful temper in the form of people, I'm not being average like other people are.
Well, yeah, they're doing this to me, right? Of sort. Right. And do you have a good spot that you could share with all of us for fearful temper, Celinda?
Just in comparisons are odious.
Yeah, good. And then we're a muscle method, so we either control our muscles or move our muscles. So let's talk about muscle control. Somewhere that Holly controlled her muscles not to do something that would be bad for our mental health. Example, controlling her speech muscles. Where do we see muscle control? Yes, Fran, please.
She controlled her speech muscles not to complain.
Yes, good. And then Jennifer, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm with Fran. We don't blame, complain, or explain.
Thank you. And then Tony, please, and then we'll go on to muscle movement.
She acted with culture, not raw nature.
Right. She controlled that from being disruptive. Right. And so we'll flip that over and we'll go to muscle movement, commanding the muscles to do something that we are resistant to do. Example, attending an RI meeting when we'd rather stay home, taking a walk and walking away from a bad situation. So where do we see muscle movement in this example? Kim, please.
She came to a meeting and gave a well-reported example.
So we could all practice. Any other muscle movement here? Yes, Joanne, please.
I'm not sure if I heard this correctly, but it sounds like she commanded her muscles to continue eating the food that she could.
Yeah, she was group-minded, wasn't she? Yeah, and that's what we learn in recovery, to be flexible and group-minded. And then we wouldn't have an example if there wasn't any sabotage. When we ignore or fail to practice what we have been taught to do in our RI, when we do not do what is best for our mental health. So where do we see some sabotage in this example? Yes, Celinda, please.
And when she kind of was comparing herself with how others were behaving and thinking she was not being average.
Right, yeah, exactly. Letting that outer environment cross over the bridge to the inner environment. Nikki, please. Sabotage?
Yeah, we never endorse ourselves enough. We endorse for every effort, no matter how small, not the outcome.
Right, good. And then Kim?
Possibly some duality. I better say something about this. No, I'm not sure that's a good idea. The mind can only hold one thought at a time. And if we're not endorsing, we are in fact indicting.
Yeah, a little more endorsing for the total view. And then Joanne, then we'll move on to endorsing.
There may have been some issues with expectations. Perfection is a hope, dream, and an illusion.
Yeah, I'm gonna just spot a little bit of like, she should have told the waitress how it should have been. But we learn to excuse rather than accuse for the sake of our mental health. Sandy, did you want to say something about sabotage?
Well, I thought that she was kind of blaming the waitress because the waitress didn't live up to her expectations.
Okay, now let's go into endorsing. We're an endorsing group. So where can we see where finding other opportunities for self-endorsements, what we put into practice and have learned using the recovery training? We don't give her endorsements, but where do we see endorsement as a whole? So yes, Fran, go ahead, please.
You can endorse for becoming self-led instead of symptom-led.
Good. And then Jennifer, please.
I can endorse. She's functioning in symptoms. Dr. Lowe says, don't tell me how you feel, tell me how you function.
Right. Mona, please.
She wore the mask and functioned during symptoms.
Right. And then Billy, and then we'll close the example.
I spot that Holly can endorse for using humor.
Yeah, humor is our best friend and temper's our worst enemy. Okay, Kim, and then we'll close.
Well, she can definitely endorse for the difference between steps 3 and steps 4, that she would have handled it differently before, maybe still processing it up in her mind. So the difference between steps 3 and 4.
Right. Okay, so let's close this example. Thank you, Holly, for your example. I hope you got some relief. And Jen, thank you for reading the steps. So the way that we get well to learn how to give an example with step 1 with confidence is attend meetings, read Dr. Lowe's literature, the RI literature, practice by giving examples, practice spotting or giving tools on others' examples, become a member, do a 5-minute phone call, post on the RI private Facebook page, and of course, use the new Power Tool cards. Next slide. You know, we are a nonprofit. We never turn any away. If you can make a donation, that would be great. The QR code, you can hold the sign, your phone right up to the QR code and it will take you right to the our donation page, or if you want to call Oak Brook Chicago headquarters tomorrow, we'll take it that way. Or you can call the San Diego office and we can take it that way. And for those of you that are still using checks, you can mail it to either of the offices and we'll get it to where it's supposed to go. We want to be here for another 88 years. People were here before us and we want to be here for another 88 years. Okay. Next slide. So we want to thank you for being here tonight. There's our website. There's the Dial-A-Spot helpline, which is really wonderful when you're in symptoms that you can use. You can also hear on the website, you can hear music in the background. It's very calming. You can call on the phone and listen to the recording as well. We do have somebody that speaks Spanish in the San Diego office. And so now I'll take questions that you may all have. Okay. Any questions? Yes, Nikki, please.
Yeah, this is a comment on Holly's example. I think we could make two examples out of it. One is that the food didn't come out the way she had expected, right? And the other would be the waitress's reaction. So at
So
least
that's
if
why-
I was doing it, I would do two examples.
So, okay, so that's why I said she wasn't, step one was that there could be two examples there, but the event that we spotted on there was that when the waitress served the food, it wasn't served the way that she wanted it to be, and that was the event.
Right. And
Right.
I thought we did a great example on that, but I'm just saying that if the symptoms don't come down, sometimes there's a second example hidden in there.
Yeah. Fran, please.
I have a suggestion for anyone who's still struggling or thinks they're not confident at all. Try writing your examples before giving them. And there's even a page in, I don't know if it's in the group leader guide or in the new person packet, where you can write out step one and it leaves a space, step two, it leaves a space, and so on. But writing it has really helped me. I to this day, I write my examples before I give them in groups.
Right, it's the last page of the welcome packet, and we can even just email you the page right out to you if that's what you would like. Okay, thanks, Angela. Billy, please.
Yeah, good one. Thank you, Fran. And that reminded me that written is moving from the subjective to the objective, which really helps the symptoms. And it means that we don't need to review and preview the experience. It's down. We can give it when we need to. What I wanted to say was what I do when I'm leading our group, that to reminder to our membership that every step, with the exception of the self-endorsement in step 3, less is more. Every step, less is more, starting with step 1, one sentence, step 2, and step 3, and then the self-endorsement. And then when we get to step 4, the before and the after, we were fairly liberal with that, but less is more when it comes to giving an example. Thank you.
Good insight. Thank you. Anybody else? No?
Thank you.
Okay.
Wonderful,
you.
Lisa. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. everyone for
Thank
your
you.
insight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tina
Bye,
and Lisa,
guys.
thank you for the work that you put in.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.